Okay, so I thought I'd just make another little short update video or something showing what's been going on lately. This is the light. This is just a prototype little cat door I'm making since I do live in an apartment. Well, it's more like a house, but like it's not really like it's a triplex kind of, and I live in the middle. And yeah, I'm just prototyping out, making a thing and seeing how it goes out of cardboard, CAD. And if I like it, I like it. I'll make it out of paneling, plywood, whatever, something, and paint it up. But yeah, glue's drying. I use spray glue and some, it's actually insulation for around doors, but makes for good, quick and dirty, temporary putting cardboard together. And then for that, I just spray glued some, I think it's Loctite brand's spray glue. First time using it, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, there's leftover plywood and I tinker a lot. But the whole point of this video, let's make our way not downtown. Things have changed since the last video I put out. I made this workbench, which is not finished but usable at the moment. It's very sturdy. Someone who weighed what seemed like twice my weight sat on it. I jumped up and down on it and laid on it, and it doesn't wobble or nothing, even though I don't have the leg braces done yet. But that's because that dresser we just passed by is going to get chopped in half. Well, not quite equally in half, because it's a 5-drawer dresser. So 3 of the drawers are going to go under here, frame that it's in and all. I got to cut it. I got to be careful how I cut it and whatnot, and it's going to be sized to go there, and then another little shelf basically will be here and slash a place for my feet, and that'll finish bracing it up on the bottom. And then eventually I'll get some of that paneling pegboard stuff. I don't really like, but I'm going to get the thin stuff, the cheap crappy one that basically if you put things heavy on it would break out, because I just want it for it'll save me on the time of like measuring and marking and drilling holes, and I'll just drill, it'll already have the pre-made holes, and then I'll just drill them all the way through that piece of paneling as needed, and it'll make it look a little nicer. And there'll be a little shelf there to put a light, and I'll run one of those 6 workshop little things I'll hang there, and then a cord to it. And eventually this little bit will get replaced for like metalworking, and it'll be equal height with this, with its own metal back, so that I can store metalworking tools here. And I'm gonna put a wooden soft clamp vise here coming out the side of this. I designed it for that right here. There's room underneath and it's all strong. I just gotta get the nuts. I already have a piece of all thread for it, and then I gotta get the nuts, and then I can make that out of some wood pieces for soft jaw stuff. And then that piece of belt is just going to get stapled down somewhere. Maybe here, but probably not. Probably more like right here or somewhere down here. It's going to get stapled down so I can just manually hand sand things. And that's what is that, 80 grit? I can't remember. Or is it 38? Or I don't know. I don't remember, and it's heavily used, so I don't know what it started out or if it's still the same. But yeah, and this is I want my wagon back is why I'm doing that, and I got tired of being hunched over while working on this project. They came and fixed my air conditioner finally, so that's why I was able to build that finally inside. That's why it's sawdust and paneling, and yeah. So I'm going to take that vise off of that. And I don't know, I don't really want to put that vise here. That was my first thought, was to put it like right here, of course, as you do. But I don't really want to put a vise like that. I don't want to put that there. I'm going to have the soft vise, which the jaw of it will extend out to here, and there'll be an inner jaw. It won't just be using the side of this as the jaw. And then I'll be able to put thick metal plates on it as like harder. It'll be designed to be a good vise. The only weak point will be the wood that's like part of it's made of, but I don't think I'm going to abuse it that hard. And then this thing here is going to be my kind of like an anvil, but I'm not going to use it as a serious anvil. It's just a thing I found laying in the woods. I don't know if it's a piece of I-beam, a piece of rail off of something, whether it be a truck frame, a camper frame, a actual train rail, or just a beam from a building. I don't know. It's all bent up and everything, so it's been through hell and back, but it's thick, strong, heavy metal. So once I get the bit made here, that'll go between, basically, with this bit pointed down. And that'll just be something to be heavy and sturdy so I can flatten out pieces of metal and whatnot on. That's about all I ever use an anvil for. I'm not a professional. I don't need an anvil with all the holes and to drift anything or the pointy tip or any of that. I just need a sturdy surface to beat on. So that'll do as long as I build all that section to fit it and make it all strong to the ground. And probably going to cut out some tire pieces as like to go on the ground underneath, just so it has a bit of a dampening, so it doesn't ever crack the ground there, the concrete or cement or whatever you call it. But yeah, so, and those are the little Jeep body parts. And here soon I'm going to get back to building this little RC project, which I didn't show much of it before because, well, I was just too busy. But let's look at it now. So I'm almost done with it. This project is kind of for me to get used to, because that project will be my first project, the big Power Wheels thing. Will be my first time ever building something with steering and finishing it and actually getting to that part. Like I was working on a go-kart years ago. I think I have an old video of it on YouTube somewhere. But I never finished it. I wound up becoming homeless and stuff and leaving that frame in the shed. I never got to work on the steering part of it, so it still didn't technically steer when I left it. So I still have not yet learned how to, on my own anyways, how to properly make a steering setup. So that's what this little toy car is for, is before I buy the parts, because I'm going to buy the actual steering, a pre-made setup for like a go-kart or something for it, but I want to learn the geometry of it and stuff on here, at least in this small scale. And as you can see, this stuff's kind of got welds and stuff, and I broke it apart, but that's because I got the geometry wrong and I've got to redesign it. So there'll be a whole video showing on, this is the failed version. So basically that goes up through the steering motor, as they do on Power Wheels, and just like that. And then the motor with its little key bit there turns that shaft. Well, actually this part sits stationary and then it turns that. And that's the geometry. I got all that geometry wrong. So it's actually supposed to be this way, right here. So this arm goes there, and that was attached to the top of that arm, and that was attached to the top of that arm, and that, is still attached to that. And then the motor was there, and it was more or less upright. Higher though, of course. Yeah. And it just it bound up with too much, so I just kind of, and it wasn't welded on strong enough, I just kind of bent it back and forth and they all broke off. Which is good, because I got it wrong. Their lengths are all, and it's just designed wrong. So I will try again soon enough on the next decent day where I feel up to it. And once I get the steering locked in and figured out, I can assemble, because it's pretty much ready. All I got to do is finish figuring out the steering, and then make sure everything's sturdy. I think everything is finished sturdily welding. Yeah, I've strengthened up everything else that needed to be. I just got to finish the steering, and then I can assemble the toy car. This is where the battery goes. The motor controller goes here. Left motor, right motor, and all that with their little motors. They overlap each other and go there. And then, the wheels and the steering. And this bit here is simply just to house this motor. Remove that. let's see. Yeah, I did some test fitting while the metal was hot, but it's okay. It still works. It's a little tight squeeze, but let's see. Is it in there? There we go. Now it's in its proper spot. But yeah, so that goes there, and then zipped. Once it's all done and put together, the piece here pins through and locks it to that, so that'll be a front support, and then this is for zip ties to be a back support. It only really needs side-to-side support, so that's why it's kind of beefy, and it doesn't need up and down support so much. And if that's not good enough, I'll just make it bigger and make it wrap all the way around, metal bolt down. But yeah, it's just a neat little, just a way of practicing making steering and stuff, and then, you know, making use of the leftover parts, or the leftover RC parts, and then just some other metal that I have laying around. And then some of the Power Wheels parts, like the axle was cut down shorter, the front axle obviously I'm trying to use some of that, because kind of need to, or it's easier to use some of that. And then that's just a square tubing, some other, that's actually all of that square tubing. That's a piece of square tubing, that's a piece of square tubing, and all of that square tubing pieces just cut up. And then that's just a piece of flat plate that I bent the corners. It was not quite big enough to just bend the edges, and I didn't want to weld it into like angle, and I didn't want to cut a bunch of more square tubing up to have the angle. So I rotated it into, like, you know, a diamond for the battery, and I realized it would work. The only bit that was in the way was this little bit was in the way of the motor housing for the back there. But it's still enough of a lip, and also the back of the motor housing will be right up against the battery. So, and then that lip, and then, you know, more zip ties, and if I have to put like a little notch or something for the zip ties, I'll use good zip ties for it. That'll hold the battery, and then that truck body goes on top of it when it's all said and done in those wheels. So basically it'll have a ride height of about that, something like that. That's it, truck body. It's a Bronco. I guess some people call it a truck. In my head, if it doesn't have an open cargo bay on the rear, it's not a truck. So, like, if it doesn't have a permanently always open cargo bay. So, like, even that Cyber, they call it a truck, is not a truck. That's got the fucking thing that turns it into a car. Like looks like it's pretending to be a weird PlayStation 1 El Camino or something. I don't know. That can transform into a car with the little cover that goes over the back that's permanently attached. Like, it's not a truck. But anyways, yeah, that's what I've been up to. I don't know, I just wanted to put out another little update real quick. Don't expect too many quick projects on the big Power Wheels. I know I say that's my next big build, and it is, but that one's going to take me like maybe 2 years. I'm slowly gathering parts. I got that far on the starter frame, and then I realized, or decided anyways, I want to get some more parts in to full width and move around and hold up to stuff and get some more ideas with how I want the frame to be shaped before I start. Because I was just going to build the starter frame, match it up to the two ends of the Power Wheels body, the front and the rear, and then, you know, keep going from there as I get parts in the mail. And then I'll also, you know, figure out where I want the axles to be mounted. And then I realized I want to prioritize comfort over anything with this. So I want to get the seat in the mail, and I want to figure out how the seat's going to fit in between the rear part of the body, what height I want that, build those mounts first, then figure out there's a lot of stuff I want to do, and I think the seat's the next thing, and that's like a $150 seat that I'm looking at. It's technically a universal tractor seat, but it's going to be comfy. It's going to be nice. It's got armrests. I like armrests. But it's not the cheapest, and it's not the most expensive. But You know, I'm just using a mix and match of parts, but they're all going to be bought new for this project. Even that Power Wheels was bought new. I paid $200 for a Power Wheels with the full intention from the start to cut it up and have nothing left of it but that. I could have got a used one somewhere, but I wanted a new one. I played with the hell out of it. I rode the thing around the neighborhood and, you know, made a joke of it, and everybody laughed, and it was fun. I let some neighborhood kids play with it. And, you know, it was a RC Power Wheels, which is why I'm using the parts for this. So that was pretty fun to play with it as an RC toy, a jumbo one. I'd always wanted to do that when I was little. So, yeah. I mean, I think I got my money. I'm getting my money's worth out of it, $200 worth. You know, and the RC car, or the wheels and, you know, stuff came from the body and whatnot was originally free at a Habitat resale store. It's kind of like a Goodwill. Basically, if stuff sits around long enough and it's broken or whatever, they start putting for free signs on it. And I just happened to walk in one day and that was just sitting there for free. And I was like, did someone claim that already? And they said no. So I took it home. The motor's in it. Everything was good. It's just the remote was the wrong remote for it. It wasn't paired to it. And the steering was kind of weak. What else was it? The battery didn't... I think the battery didn't really work very well. Yeah, the chargers, it wasn't taking a charge if there was a battery. I can't remember if it came with a battery, but I hooked it up to a 12-volt system on the motors and hooked it up to the brains from the Power Wheels with the same motors that were in it, and it worked fine. I used it that way for a while when I jerry-rigged the steering, but eventually the little plastic bits for the axles and things and hubs all gave way, running on a little bit higher voltage because it used to run on like 7 volts or something. So those motors, they were able to take the 12-volt setup, but So once it started to disintegrate, I tore it the rest of the way down. I still have the motors for something else, but they're not as torquey as these. They're geared to a little higher speed, less torque. So these are lower speed, you know, for the Power Wheels, but more torque. These could, the Power Wheels motors could pull me around, so with ease. So 2 of those on the rear of this, and then the steering one on the front, instead of being 4-wheel drive now, because it was originally 4-wheel drive. So I'll use those other motors for something else eventually, but they're just like motor gearbox combo with a straight axle coming out of each of them for these sorts of things. So, and then you got to figure out if you want one of the axles to be steering, you got to have a steering setup similar to this, but different. But anyways, I think I've rambled for too long now. I thought I'd show and talk about, you know, I'm slowly getting my setup the way I want it to, so I can tinker. And expect more videos on little projects like this in the future. Little at a time. I'll try and actually set up and do time lapses and things. I overheat easily. I get in a lot of pain. Hopefully I could be in less pain when I'm tinkering now for the workbench being higher up, and I got a proper desk chair here as my chair with a backrest and all that. So just, you know, weather, getting a fan on me and make sure it's not too hot or too cold, because my workspace is technically outside. So it's the sun trying to blind us. But yeah, my workspace is technically outside. So that's the weather's kind of, I depend on if it's comfy out here or not, because it's just hobby stuff mostly. So the only thing that's kind of important to build is that mobility scooter, but since I do currently have a working one, I'm not rushing it like I used to. With the first one, I rushed that build. That's why it's made out of garbage. But yeah, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Yeah, I'm trying to get this channel out there again so that people can see this stuff. I'm not trying to make money on it or anything. I'm just sitting around the house bored making stuff. So if you like it, share it. Like it, subscribe to it, share it with people. Let them know. It's just another one of those channels building stuff. So that's all. Till next time.